Tucker Carlson confessed that he does, in fact, lie if he's really cornered on something. In fact, here is his conversation with Dave Rubin where he makes the confession.
When you have to cover some idiotic thing that Stelter said or Cuomo, just these clown people, when you have to cover it, right? Or Don Lemon, as you call him, like how do you think they live with themselves at this point when they just lie again and again? And we have the internet to expose the lies. If this isn't 20 years ago when you were on CNN, and we couldn't expose things, we can expose it now and they still do it.
Well, I guess I would ask myself, like, I mean, I lie. If I'm really cornered or something, I lie. I really try not to. I try never to lie on TV. I just don't, I don't like lying. I certainly do it, out of weakness or whatever.
Before we get to the whole lying thing, which is the point of the story, I just want to note that the majority of that conversation was about holding the elites accountable. The corporate elites. Notice he has framed Roosevelt dead behind him.
Yeah, I did notice that. I thought two things curious about this. Well, number one, why Tucker Carlson, who's an enormously wealthy man, has to do this interview in a closet. And second of all, what a curious thing to seemingly purposely frame behind you in that shot. Roosevelt dead. I'm sure he has an explanation.
Yeah, the explanation is goons like him don't actually want to tax the rich. They don't want an equitable political system. They pay lip service to the political and economic anxieties that Americans have. But while he might point to the rigged economic system, his solutions have nothing to do with building a robust social safety net or funding government programs or taxing the rich. He has that framed because it was a celebration for people like him when Roosevelt died, right? Because
we don't know. We don't know.
No, I know.
But so
Come
look,
on.
So first of all, A, we don't know the backstory to it. But B, Tucker has to realize no one else knows the backstory either. All they're gonna see is Roosevelt dead, and it makes it look like, even if you don't intend it, it makes it look like you're celebrating it. So it's a curious thing to put back there. And Anna, it makes an interesting point that Roosevelt was considered a class traitor, a traitor to his class. And of course, Tucker is the heir to the Swanson fortune and now makes enormous money on Fox News. And so maybe he doesn't like traitors to his class. I don't know, but that's all speculation. Let's get to the heart of it. So the heart of it is, if you watch the rest of it, he goes off on the corporate ruling class, Tucker Carlson does. Well, if you divorce it from everything else, that's great. Like, in fact, if you watch those couple of minutes, you'd be like, wait, is this one of the most progressive people in America? But that's why it's so mind-bending that he connects it to the other awful stuff, right? Like, the corporate elites are terrible. That's why we have to make sure that we crush immigrants that have no power at all and don't have anything to do with controlling the system, but they're the number one problem. They're making the country dirty.
Right-wing populism.
That doesn't make any logical sense at all.
Yeah, listen. I get real frustrated with people who claim they're on the left and they're super sympathetic to Tucker Carlson because he just vocalizes similar concerns about the elites, right? But what's the second half of that? You think that he wants himself and members of his Swanson family to pay more in taxes? Has he ever suggested that? Has he even hinted at that? Never. Right? The only thing he ever does is talk about those issues and then talk about how these corporations are either too woke or too friendly to issues involving diversity, right? That's it. He's never at once been a proponent of the policies that we actually genuinely need for more equality in the country, not just racially, not just gender-wise, not just identity-wise, but economically speaking.
Well, that's partly why our press is awful and the folks that go on his show are useful patsies, because no one has bothered to ask him, hey, you keep railing against the corporate elite. And by the way, I'll tell you why he does it. He does it because even the right wing now despises big business, because big business is kicking the living crap out of them and giving them $8.75 to work at Walmart instead of having a real job with respect and dignity. So he's playing to the masses, but no one has ever asked him, okay, so and then what?
What are your solutions?
What's your solution for that? The corporate tax rate They got a giant gift. It went from 35% to 21%, and they're not even paying any taxes now. You constantly talk about, Amazon, sometimes he'll mention they pay zero in taxes. So do you want them to pay taxes? What's the rate that you want them to pay taxes at? He's not gonna say it, because it'll trigger another Republican talking point, which is protect the rich at all costs, never ever increase taxes on our beloved rich.
Totally.
So you know it, Tucker, otherwise you'd be saying it. So hey, do you want Medicare for all? Do you want everybody to have health care because the corporate elite in private insurance and drug companies are screwing us? Nope, you don't. So do you want higher wages, $15 minimum wage? At least this, and that creates pressure on the rest of the market to go up as well. So it's higher wages for everybody. Do you want that? Because big business is trying to make it as low as possible and crushing us. Nope, blame the brown people that just crossed the border without a dollar in their pocket. So it certainly to the naked eye appears to be propaganda that gets you to hate all the wrong people when you're actually mad about big business. Exactly. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me when the Koch brothers took the Tea Party, who was mad about the Wall Street bailouts, and then brought buses, literally hired buses, took them, and instead of driving them to Wall Street to protest the bank bailouts, they drove them to rallies to protest healthcare, the Obamacare. They said, we don't want any healthcare. Wait, what? Man, they are so easily duped and tricked into working against their own interests, which then leads all the way back to Tucker's lies. So now, if he's doing a small admission of like, hey, everybody lies in their regular life, that's true. People do white lies all the time, right? Do you look good in that outfit? You know all the cliches.
Yeah, but that's not what he was referring to.
But the reality is that's not all he's talking about.
No, he was blunt about it. He's like, whenever I'm cornered on something.
Yeah, see, that was an interesting way of framing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think white lies to be polite, because that's what I do, right?
Everyone does that, yeah.
Yeah, but he said when he's cornered on something.
Yeah.
When I'm cornered on something that's happened in the last story, I immediately admit my mistake because guys, here's the most important part of it. It's not that we have an obligation to the progressive movement or to Bernie Sanders or Nina Turner or anything like that. We have an obligation to you guys, and the obligation is to bring you the news in a way that is true and accurate. So whereas Tucker Carlson thinks, if I'm cornered, I'm going to lie, because it's about him, it's not about you guys. Which, by the way, is also true of mainstream media. When the New York Times lied about me, they said, how dare you insult us by saying that we lied about you? But you did, and it's a fact. And they had to retract it because it was a lie. And then they were super mad at us because it was about their ego. Oh my God, poor Jennifer Medina. You might have hurt her career by pointing out that she lies brazenly about people that she writes about. No, it's not about you. Don't you respect your readers at all? Don't you care? And the same for Tucker's viewers. So, and the biggest lie of all is that the right-wing populists actually care about any of these issues that actually affect your lives.
Exactly, yep. All right, by the way, one final thing I'll add to this. He might be publicly saying this in an effort to protect himself in a possible lawsuit in the future, because he has used the defense of no one takes me seriously or considers me a credible journalist to fight a slander lawsuit that was brought forward by Karen McDougal. And in that case, the judge made the ruling that heavily relied on the argument by the defense. Her name was Judge Mary Kay Viscosil, and she said that Fox persuasively argues that given Mr. Carlson's reputation, any reasonable viewer arrives with an appropriate amount of skepticism about the statement he makes. The general tenor of the show should then inform the viewer that Carlson is not stating actual facts about the topics he discusses and is instead engaging in exaggeration and non-literal commentary. Whether the court frames Mr. Carlson's statements as exaggeration, non-literal commentary, or simply bloviating for his audience, the conclusion remains the same. The statements are not actionable.
So this one is also nuanced. It's funny to say that they literally go into court and say, well, nobody would believe Tucker. Has Rachel Maddow made a similar argument on MSNBC? Yes. Was it as extreme as this? No. and it was about a much more nuanced issue, and they didn't say, no, she's Bozo the Clown. Nobody would ever believe her. They made a more sophisticated version of the argument, but it's on the same legal basis, okay?
Yeah.
So on the other hand, that case was totally decided wrong. That was a Trump-appointed judge, and I want you to know the reality of that. Tucker Carlson had said that the women that were having affairs with Donald Trump were doing literal extortion. And he said it was indisputable that they were doing extortion, which is a crime. So that was classic defamation. It's very hard to prove defamation for good reason. You have to prove actual malice on top. Not that he just stated it wrong, but there, he knows it wasn't literal extortion, let alone the fact that it wasn't extortion at all. He misstated every fact. He says they went and threatened Trump. They didn't. That's not how the story went at all. And the judge at the very end, after all this bloviating talk, says no person of ordinary intelligence would believe that Tucker Carlson really meant what he said about extortion. She is 100% wrong. Yeah. Almost everybody in that Fox News audience thought that Tucker was saying something that was true. They thought it was literal extortion. I mean, they'll believe you should take horse dewormer. You think they won't believe that those mistresses of Donald Trump were trying to extort poor Donald Trump? And that he was the victim and they were the aggressors? Of course, 99% of the audience believed that and thought it was true. It was absurd to claim that it was hyperbole, and which happens all the time. If it was real hyperbole, I'd say, oh guys, let it go, right? But in this case, in that particular very specific case, the judge was being ridiculous. Everybody in the Fox News audience believes Tucker, especially when he's specifically stating facts like that, which are not facts. There are a lot of great ways to watch the Young Turks, but is there a best way? Of course, the best way is to watch live. Tune in weekdays, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. You get our uncensored, unapologetic version of the news that you won't get anywhere else. Watch us live.